Hi, this is Kat Chelmsford with Stamp Art Connection and StampArtConnection.com. I'm an independent Stampin' Up! Demonstrator, and I want to demonstrate the T-Slide card for Father's Day featuring another design. Now, I made this card using another stamp set, and here it is right here. I had some problems with it, but as you can see, it opens up fine now, except that it kind of like sticks right there. And if you watch that video, you know I kind of made some adjustments. So this card, I'm going to change it up a little and do a different design. I didn't add a tab to the end of this one. I'm just going to use just a piece of cardstock so that it slides more smoother than the tab that I added to the end of this, because this got it kind of hung up. I also, in my last card, I added some DSP. I'm going to add some DSP in this card as well, but the DSP, I'm going to ensure that it covers the entire front of the 5x5 cardstock rather than cutting it halfway so that it doesn't get caught on our sliding mechanism. So those are some of the issues that I addressed. So hopefully this will come out a little bit smoother. And I also am going to show you how to create this DSP. So the products you're going to need for this card are: you're going to need a piece of 5x5 very thick cardstock. That was another change that I made with this design. I wanted something with a little bit more stiffness. I have Pool Party, which is going to be the back of my card, and that's going to be cut at 5 1/4 by 5 1/4 square. And then I'm going to be using a piece of Calypso Coral, which is going to serve as my slide mechanism, and then where I'm going to go ahead and print Happy Father's Day. I've already stamped and colored my image using the Good Man stamp set, and the framelits from the Stitch Shaped, the largest circle from the Stitch Shaped, and then the largest scallop from the scallop circle dies, layering circle dies in framelits. And I did that in Pool Party, and then I just used plain Whisper White. The colors I used for coloring are, I used light pink pirouette for the light and dark pink pirouette for the skin tone. I use balmy blue, light and dark balmy blue, and a little bit of light navy to kind of create the folds on his shirt. I used Crumb Cake, light and dark Crumb Cake for his shorts, and then I used Calypso Coral for the backgrounds of the chair, and a little bit of Crumb Cake for the sand. Now you'll notice that I put these little sequins here. These sequins were a part of the Stamp Celebrations gifts, and they came out, if you bought a certain amount of products, you could pick this for free. They're kind of interesting because they look a bit variegated, but if you just pick the ones that are kind of the brown and the tan, you can kind of create a nice sand look. And then here I use the Bermuda Bay just to come up with some, kind of looks like some shells that have landed on the beach. I also used a flower from my Tropical Oasis trinkets to kind of embellish this card. Now, the big part of making this card is not only going to be the cutting and the measurement, so you're going to need a scoreboard and a cutting board. I also have my regular stamping trimmer and my mini stamping trimmer, but you're also going to do some brayering, so you're going to need a sponge brayer and Calypso Coral ink and Daffodil Delight ink, and we're going to create this. And I did that by taking a long piece of acetate, and there's my acetate, and I simply cut a nice wave. I think those are all the pieces and parts. The sentiment is stamped with the well said. You can put these together. You can put these together for Happy Father's Day, and they work nicely. They work very nicely for kind of fitting sentiments in a small space. These are actually, you get 2 stamp sets with this. I use the 2 of 2, but it has a lot of good sentiments that to have in your crafting room. Okay, so I think I've covered all the things that you're going to need. I'm going to begin with. I'm just going to put my card here. I'm going to begin with here's my paper, but I'm going to show you kind of the cutouts that I made to help you with making this card. And I had this in my previous video, and I'm also going to have this on my blog. So your base card is going to be 5 1/4. You're going to layer it with a piece of thick Whisper White cardstock cut at square 5 by 5. You can see here where I highlighted in pink, these are going to be your cut lines. You're going to have score lines, and then you're going to have a slot line, and this is where this piece of cardstock is going to go. This is your slot for when you open your card, the sentiment is going to pop out. And this is going to be 3 1/2 by 1 1/4. You're then going to need your T-square pieces, which are basically the mechanism for this card. And this is going to be 4 1/4 by 1 and 4 by 1. So this is the pull tab. The 4 inch by 1 inch is a pull tab, and the longer one, 4 1/4 by 1, that's going to be our cross kind of our cross member that's going to be pulled across the back of our card. I'm also pulled out a piece of DSP from one of the older sets. I think this is one of the C sets. I'm going to use this, and I'm going to place this on the back. Let me use this because I want to have some color. You can see where I have some color on the back of my card, but I was really inspired by the colors of this designer series paper. Now, since this is expired, I wanted to then recreate it using just basically a sponge brayer and some ink to show you how you can recreate this technique and kind of come up with the same effect. So let's go ahead and put everything aside and let's get started. So what I want to do first is I want to show you some of the different ways that I basically sponged this, and I was really happy as I kind of worked my way across these different my different samples. Many of these I made the mistake of cutting them wrong. So what I want to do, like I kind of cut this slot on the wrong end. So I just kind of want to show you how pretty and really how different all the different types of pieces that you can create using this card, using this technique. Okay, so now let's go ahead and put this aside. I'm going to bring in a piece of my grid paper because I want to protect my work surface, and I think you'll be able to see things a little bit more clearly. And I just kind of like to have another piece of grid paper here. So I'm going to take my Whisper White cardstock, and I've cut a piece of acetate into kind of I guess kind of a nice curve. Now I used a framelit from one of the winter cards that kind of has a horizon framelit, and I just kind of cut this one and then turned it around, and it came up a little rough right here where it's not totally totally smooth, but that's okay. You can cut your curve any way you want. You don't have to use acetate. I like it because it's a little bit more sturdy than just using a piece of cardstock. So we're going to start out with kind of doing the top of our card. We're going to do like this and just kind of start right there. And what's going to happen is when we do this, this is actually going to become, from looking at how it's degraded, this is actually going to become the top. So the top of where you start when you're sponge daubing your card is going to be the darkest part. So we want to take our Calypso Coral and we want to take our sponge dauber, and I'm just going to run this across my ink pad, and then I'm going to hold this, and I can kind of start from one side to the other. So I'm just going to kind of have this here as a guide, and I'm just going to go across, and I'm not going to go too dark. You just want to lay down a little bit of color, and you just kind of work the sponge dauber across like that. Okay, that's done. Now I'm going to shift this. I'm going to move my my acetate, and I'm going to run across the entire thing again. And you can see how I want to create. And as I run across it, I'm just kind of focusing on getting this first layer, and then I'm also going across my my initial layer, because I'm adding pigment. I am adding color. As I add color, this is going to get darker. And I'm going to kind of change this up because I kind of want to create a nice waveform pattern. And I'm holding it with my fingers, and then here we go again. And sometimes I just like to use the sponge brayer just kind of up and down, and you just kind of go quickly across it, and it kind of smooths out. And then we're going to go this way. I'm going to move this a little bit this way. And at some point I'm going to add some yellow, but I'm not there yet. So we're going to go ahead and and I'm sponging all the way across my cardstock, all the way across. And if I need to blend, I'm just kind of going over here to the edge and blending. Okay, and now we're going to kind of go here. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to grab my Daffodil Delight, and I'm just going to kind of do 1, 2, 3, add a little bit of Calypso Coral. I'm kind of mixing it a little bit. Again, I'm holding it with my finger, and I'm going across, and I want to get that first layer. And it's a little bit harder to hold when you're at this point. And you can also kind of slide your brayer across as almost like a giant sponge dauber. Then I'm going to add a little bit of, and I've got to kind of use the tip of my nails here. And I'm adding a little bit more Calypso Coral just to kind of blend these colors in. And now I can use this. I'm going to flip this around, And at this point I can kind of, let me clean my acetate. I'm just going to take a baby wipe and just kind of clean, and then I want to dry my acetate. So I just got a piece of paper towel off camera. And then I'm just going to line this up right here, kind of like where I think this went. Hopefully it will match. Maybe not. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of this Calypso Coral on my brayer, and I'm going to go all the way across my card. A little bit of yellow. And I'm just working the colors. I'm just working these colors in. And sometimes I'm not rolling, I'm simply just scraping this brayer across my paper. Like a big sponge dauber. And there you go. So there is a very nice kind of designer series paper where you have your colors. So let's try another one, only because I want to show you real fast again how this worked. Here we go, and we're just going to use the Calypso Coral. And there you go. There's another one, and it's simply using just the Calypso Coral. So you kind of have two ways of putting this together, where I've kind of used a little bit of Daffodil Delight and then just the plain Calypso Coral, and you can kind of see the difference in what this does to your paper. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and pick this up. Now we're going to turn this around, and this is going to be the top of our card. And that would be the top of our card. Just to kind of give it a little bit of, see, isn't that pretty? So it gives it a really nice look. All right, so let's go ahead and cut these pieces. Now, I'm going to bring in my very, very dirty scoreboard, and I want to score this. And let's bring in our pattern. I want the top of the card to be with the fold side to my right. So I'm going to put the top of the card, and that's going to be my fold. So just as a guide, what I'm doing is I'm going to score these lines so that I can kind of see where I'm going to need to cut. So my first score line is going to be at 3/4, and I'm going to kind of go lightly up here, and then, you know, kind of follow that down, and then kind of score there. And then I'm going to, that's where I'm going to cut. And then I'm going to cut again at 3 3/4. Again at 3 3/4. Alexa, down.
Sorry, I don't know that.
Alexa, turn volume down. Okay, so now I've kind of made a square, as you can kind of see right there, which is going to match our pattern. So what I want to do with this square is, now I'm going to get my scoreboard, and I want this to be the top, so I don't want to cut on this end, right? So if this is going to be the top, I want my score side to be on this side. So I want to turn it this way, and I want to line up this piece on the 4 and let's see, the 4 3/4, which is right about there. 4 1/4. I'm going to line this up at 4 1/4, which is going to line up perfectly. And if you can see, right here, I have my, you can see my score line. You can see I kind of have my, you can see the score line is lined up right on the the gutter. So I am going to come down to 3/4, which is right here. Okay, I'm going to put my little cutter line right there at 3/4, and that's where I'm going to start. Oops, that's not my cutter line. Let me get my little cutter. I'm going to do my cutter at 3/4, and then I'm going to take it all the way down to 4 1/4, which is right there. Okay. So I want to now, this is the side I want to, this is my top, so I want to do this side here. I'm going to turn this way, and we're going to do the same thing. This is going to be at 4 1/4. I'm going to take this and I'm going to slide this up to 1 3/4 right there, 1 3/4, and then I'm going to move it this way. I'm going to line this here to 4 1/4, and I'm going to go ahead and cut this to 4 1/4, and I have my 3 sides cut. Now the other thing I need to do is I need to cut my slot. This side here at 3 1/4, and then I'm going to line this up at 1 7/8. Okay, so there's 3 1/4. I'm going to line this up for 1 7/8, and I've got that lined up for 1 7/8 right there, and I'm going to cut that all the way down to 3 1/8. So 1 7/8, and it goes all the way down to 3 1/8. Okay, and there's my slot. All right, so now I'm going to move this aside. I'm going to grab my scoreboard, because now I'm going to score. Go ahead and put this, and we're going to put it this way. And the first thing we're going to do, of course, is our favorite little 3 1/4, and that goes from this corner all the way down to this corner. Okay, and then we're going to do it at 1 1/4 or 2 1/4. So we're just going to bring this down and do it at 2 1/4. And then we're going to do this at 3 3/4, which is right there. And there you go. So now, using our pattern, we have the folds we need to pull this back and create our and create our card. And I'm simply going to use my score and make sure that I score these well. There we go. Okay, so now we have this piece. So the next thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to cut these pieces right here, all my little tabs. And you can see how nicely this cardstock is going to fit on the back of this, because I've cut this cardstock, I've cut this 5 by 5. So this is going to fit nicely right back here. And then that is going to be put on our backing. Okay, so now let's cut all the T-squares. So I'm going to take this cardstock and I'm going to use some Calypso Coral and I'm going to start cutting some pieces. So I'm going to use my mini cutter, and let me just kind of move out here. I'm going to use my mini cutter. All my pieces for this are, let me just lay them out, 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1 inch. So I got 2 1 inch and 1 1/4. All right. So we're going to come over here and we're going to cut a piece 1 inch on our mini cutter. So you can see here's my mini cutter. There's my 1 inch. I'm just going to line this up along this line here. And there's 1 inch. Then I have another one that's 1 inch. Slip this in here. And there's another piece of 1 inch. Now I have one that's 1 1/4. So there's 1, there's 1 1/4. I'm going to line that up. Hold this plastic piece. And there we go. So that's 1 1/4. Now I'm going to cut my cross members. My 1 1/4 is 3 1/2. So I'm going to cut this one at 3 1/2 right there. So there's that piece. This one is 4 1/4. So there's 4 1/4 goes all the way to the end of this little cutter. And then this one is, our pull tab is 4. So we're just going to go ahead and cut that right there at 4. Boom. Got them all cut right here. Okay. So this is 1 inch. I'm going to mark it at right in the middle because that's going to be my center line. This one, and because this is our cross, so I just kind of want to know for the center line of my cross. The longer one's my cross, so that's 4 1/4. So what I really need the center line for is my cross. So the center line of my cross is going to be 2 1/8. Right there. So that's the center line of my cross. The center line of my pull tab is going to be at 1/2. Now the reason why I'm doing that is because I just want to make sure that when I put these two together that I line these up and that I'm pulling this with the same amount of force and I don't have it cattywampus. Okay, so that's kind of in my previous video. I was really going a little crazy on my on my directions, but I think I figured it out. So now I'm going to take my cardstock and I'm going to grab my Happy Father's Day. Here's Happy, here's Father's Day. I'm going to put them on a block, and I should have this, yeah. Put this on a nice little block like this. And I want to line this up like this. Okay, I'm going to line this up kind of on the edge, because when I stamp this, instead of putting it in the middle, I'm going to put this on the edge because I want it to show up as soon as you pull this tab. It's going to pop out, and see, it's kind of, there's a little bit of room there, and I don't want that this time. So I'm going to go ahead and just get some Memento black ink. And I'm just going to stamp this up. And we're just going to stamp that right there. There's Happy Father's Day. All right. So then I'm just going to place these back into my little box. And that is all the stamping that you have to do for this card. A lot of this card is just cutting and gluing. All right, so now we're going to grab our piece. I've got my little, this is going to go in here like this. And we're going to score this one right here at 1/2, okay? All right. Now I'm going to grab my tear tape and a pair of scissors, and I'm going to place the tear tape on the back of my, I'm going to grab my tear tape and put it on the right side. So the tear tape goes on the side of the sentiment. See? Slip that in there, and the tear tape goes right here on this. So let's just go ahead and pull this off, and let's stick this out again and make sure it's straight, because I want that to slide in there straight. And then I'm going to line up that score line there, and there you go. So now that, see how nice it's gonna show up right there. So now we're gonna close that, because then what I'm going to do is now we're gonna put together our T-square. So, and then I'm just gonna go over here, and this thing here is 3.5. So 3.5 is 1.5. So that should be 1 1/4. So it should be right here. So that should be the center of my pulping. Okay, so I'm just kind of trying to line up, because I'm basically going to put a piece of tear tape across this. And let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and then I'm going to lay my T-square here. I'm going to go ahead and put a piece of tear tape there. Create my T-square. And I keep putting my little measurements on the wrong side. Here we go again, Katrina. Boy, I haven't had enough coffee. All right, so this is going to go lined up right there. All right, so there's my T right there. And now I'm going to tear off this piece of tear tape here. And I'm going to lay my T and match up my little lines here. I'm going to lay my T right there. Okay, so now this should pull right here. Now to get this piece right here, I am going to notch this, okay? So now that I have this on here, I'm going to grab a circle punch, and I'm using a 1/2 circle punch, and I'm going to basically put this in the center right there, And I'm going to and that is going to be how I'm going to pull this thing, okay? I'm going to use that. So I'm not going to add any more cardstock on this. It's basically done. So I have my T-square card. So now I can put the rest of my tear tape around the outside. So let's go ahead and be careful. You don't want to get it. You want to get it as close to the edge as possible. We got plenty of room there. Okay, so this is the top. This is our card front. So the mistake I made, or rather the improvement I've come up with, is I'm going to put this I'm going to put this right on here, and I think I'm also going to notch. I'm going to notch this as well, but I'm going to notch it. I'm going to notch it now. So I'm going to notch it like this. See, that's a perfect circle. So we're just going to go up like that. Okay, so that should, yeah, that lines up. See that? Just kind of lined up my notches. All right, so now we're going to take this off, and this is the improvement, is that now this DSP is going to lay on the back of this and just basically, in a sense, be the back of our card. Okay, and then I'm going to put this here, and we're going to line this up, and I'm going to kind of do it, I'm going to kind of line it up like this. I want my notched part to line up the best. That's really where I want my notch to line up. So I'm just kind of lining this up like this. And I'm just going to slide it out. Now, if I have a little bit sticking out, well, guess what? That's why we have a paper trimmer as good as this little paper trimmer here, because this little thing will slice to the nth degree. See that? Look at that. Look at that. That's beautiful. See, cleaned it up. I love this paper trimmer. I got to tell you, folks, when I tell you to get stuff, you need to get stuff. There it is. Look, it works. It works. Now, all we have to do is we're going to put this one on here. Let me just put some glue. Now, I wasn't going to color this for you because I figured you didn't come to see this video to figure out how to color. You came to this video to figure out how to put this card together. And then I'm going to kind of lift this piece up, and I'm just going to kind of lay this right here because this is going to be kind of my center. And I like to put this little, I like to get this kind of centered, and I just like to put a little line back here. That way I know I want my tape to go right on this side. So I am going to lay a nice long piece of tape right there. This is a Father's Day card that's going to my brother. Okay, so there we go. So now I know I've got my tape there, so now I'm just basically gonna flatten this out and make sure that my little top covers my sentiment, because that's going to be a surprise. And that's perfect. See that? Boom. All right. So now let's embellish. I'm going to bring in my embellishments here, and I'm bringing in my very skinny thin glue. And I like to use my silicone mat when I put on glue. And I'm going to basically do my, I'm going to do my bench first. I have this little tool, and I think this is used, let's see, here it is. This is a jewel picker. It's a jewel picker, and it's got a fat end and a skinny end. I kind of open up both ends, but it's got kind of this rubber sticky end. So what I like to do is I like to go ahead and lay out, my kind of some colors. So I'm going to lay out some browns, and I want some different sizes. So I'm just going to bring out, and I've got different colors here. I've got browns and tans, so I want to kind of separate them. So now I'm going to use my browns and tans for the base of my chair guy here. I'm going to take my fine tip glue pen, and what I like to do is I just like to go ahead and put where I think I want these, and I'm just going to go ahead and do one here. I'm just making dots. One here, 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 one here. Okay. And then I'm going to just start picking up these and setting them down. Put that one there. And then I'm going to kind of alternate a little bit. Make sure this is the right angle. Okay, so there's kind of like my seashells kind of on the bottom. I'm gonna let those are gonna set. But I'm going to start with my flower. It's going to go first because I'm going to build my things around my sequences around the flower, and I'm going to use a piece of a glue dot, and sometimes I just like to layer these things, and I'm going to put my glue dot right there. Okay, so there's my flower. Now I'm just going to go and I'm going to just do, let's see, I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of So now we're just going to let those dry, and let me put these away. So while those are setting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my base, and I'm going to grab my base card while that sets. And this is Jewel Picker. Got this on Amazon. It's a nail thing. Really good tool for picking up sequins and small stuff. I'm just going to take this, and I am going to be very careful just to kind of put it along the inside here. And I'm not going to go too much on that. I don't want to go too much to the edge, right? Because I've got my little notched. And then I'm just going to lay that down right there. And I could just grab this . I'm just going to notch this down to here. Okay, so now you kind of see where everything is totally notched up. I'm gonna go a little bit deeper. All right, so now I'm going to, those things set pretty fast. Okay, so there we go. There's our card, and I've notched this. So now you pull that, and look how nice that works. See that? That's the better way of constructing this card, I found, by just using the paper like that. So my improvements have been put your embellishment more towards the end, measure your T-square to make sure you're square on, and don't add the additional cardstock to the edge like I did here. That just simply, I mean, even though this opens, it's not as smooth as I'd like it to be. And when I made the video, it did not want to open. But I think what it was is I think some of the glue, I think the paper was kind of malleable. It's a little stiffer now. The other thing is I used your stiff Whisper White, your thick Whisper White to create this. And there you go. So this is Kat Chancellor, Stamp Art Connection, stampartconnection.com, with some improvements on the T-slide card. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, enjoy making it. Leave me questions or comments. I always answer if anyone's having a card issue. And you also give me good ideas, because some people actually come up with some better engineering ideas for how to put this together, and I'd love you to share that on my comments. Go to my blog where all my measurements are, and you'll have the patterns where this pattern will be, so you can see how I cut everything. I followed this pattern. It's all the same, just a couple of changes, nuances that you need to know when you watch my videos. Thanks for joining me. God bless. Stay well.